All right, guys, so we are going to be trying what's called a flipped lesson today. And with a flipped lesson, that basically means that you have the opportunity to listen to me teach you in Google Classroom instead of coming up to meeting space. Some of the reasons that we are going to be trying this out is, one, sometimes I know we're absent and we miss out on learning in class. If I'm recording myself teaching, you have the opportunity to go back and watch that at any time. Two, sometimes we're not quite ready for the information that Miss Ritchie is giving you, and that can be overwhelming to have to remember that information and then go back later and work on it. So with this, I do want you listening and following along right away, but you will have the opportunity to go back when you're really ready to try on this skill and insert it into your work. The third reason is sometimes we don't always understand what Miss Ritchie said, and it's kind of challenging for me to go back and re-explain things during the lesson, but if you miss it, it's okay, you can just go back. And that's really nice. So with this flipped lesson, we are going to be focusing on elements of narrative and using them in our investigative stories. The first thing we want to do is maybe think about, like, what do we remember about elements of narrative? What are elements of narrative? So to do that, I brainstormed a list. If you can think of other things while I'm going through this, feel free to add them to your own list as you're listening and following along. So elements of narrative are parts of narrative writing that we think we could maybe be inserting into other types of writing. Some things that I was thinking about that I already know about narrative writing that I know I could probably use in my investigative journalism are vivid details, similes and metaphors, which if we don't remember what those are, that's comparing two things to each other, two things that are different. If you're using a simile specifically, you're comparing them with like or as. Vivid actions, and something I forgot to put on this list, so I'll add it right now, is dialogue. Highlight that too. So this list might be helpful for you to copy into your notebook. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to do that. If this was not enough time for you, you may pause the video. Now that we have this list of vivid detail or of elements of narrative that we can maybe be thinking about using in our own writing, I want to show you an example, and this is the reason I had you read the story Life Among the Ruins. I want to show you an example of how an investigative journalism is using elements of narrative in their story that they are sharing. So here we go. You guys just listened to this story. As you were listening to it, maybe you noticed these things as well. But some elements of narrative that I noticed, this author in particular from Life Among the Ruins uses a lot of vivid details. They are really creating that image in the reader's head of what is happening in this story through the way they are describing things. An example of this as we look through is at the beginning. It says, in the third floor of a crumbling building, a pink sunset glowed through a clear plastic sheet covering gaping holes in the wall. This right here really lets you know like where these people are living, what is happening. And it doesn't seem like they live in a very nice place. This is not something that we may all have experiences to. So when we use these vivid details, it gives the reader the opportunity to see something they may not understand. Another example of when vivid details are being used is, it says Alyamark School across the street, its playground now littered with bullet casings and an improvised cannon. This right here, again, it's a good vivid detail. It's creating an image in the reader's head. Again, this is not something that we may have experience with. Like, our school is not littered with bullet casings. So when the author talks about it in this way and uses these vivid details, we know what's happening in this story. We can really see this. We are there. Another example of a vivid detail, because this author uses so many of them. I don't necessarily feel like I noticed vivid action or similar metaphors in this writing, but they use a lot of vivid details. They said, young men practiced parkour on grass, cheering on each daring flip. Women sat alone smoking on benches, eyes distant, while pimpled teenagers sipped espressos. Again, this gives you a really clear image of like what the people look like, what they're doing, what their life is like. And again, this is not something that your reader is going to have experience to. So creating that image in their head of what their life is really like is super important. In this bottom piece, Miriam is talking, and this example is using dialogue to create an image in the reader's head through elements of narrative. It's so beautiful, but the damaged part is so sad, Miriam said. She had a scar above her eye from a shrapnel and was now learning Russian in school. We hope that Syria will be better again. This right here, it's an example of using dialogue to show the problem and create that image in the reader's head, and it's giving a vivid description of the character. Like, that's crazy that she has to learn Russian now. That's how much her life has changed. And through these vivid details and dialogue, these elements of narrative, we're able to get this information. So this example is really great. If you look in Miss Ritchie's own writing, which is something else you're going to be doing today, you will see that I use elements of narrative. This is also in Google Classroom in the who, what, when, where, why section if you want to look at this. This is the same story that I've been sharing with you all week. So an example where I'm using vivid details to really create an image in the reader's head is this beginning piece right here. It's also an anecdote, which you will learn about later today. This right here is creating an image in the reader's head of like how things are changing. It's giving them some background knowledge. Chinook's girls soccer team gathered in the cafeteria in early February, ready to celebrate their winning season. Like past years, they celebrated with certificates, pop, and pizza. But this year was different. This year, they were served whole wheat pizza. Another example where I'm using vivid details in my own writing to create an image for you guys is when I talk about the pizza. This pizza sounds disgusting. Highlight that so you guys can see. If a pizza is whole wheat but is dripping with grease from pepperoni and cheese, is it really helping provide students with nutritious food? Again, you can really see this image of gross cheese dripping like, ah, I don't like that. That is not healthy. Another example that's really great for you guys to maybe be thinking about is when I describe the nachos at the end. There are two descriptions of nachos. There's Miss Ritchie's version of delicious nachos, yum, and then there is also the description of the types of nachos that you guys actually get. Where is that example? It's right above it. Here we go. I mean, I remember last week when I was sharing this with you guys and I said questionable beef, you were all like, yuck, gross, I don't want to eat that. What does questionable beef mean, Miss Ritchie? Again, this is a vivid detail It's an element of narrative that is creating an image in your reader's head. Your guys' task today is going to be to try this work out. You are going to try and insert elements of narrative in your own writing today. A reminder of what that means, it means that we're looking at each paragraph and we're thinking about, how can I insert a vivid detail that will create an image in my reader's head? How can I maybe add a simile or a metaphor? How can I use vivid actions? What about dialogue? How are these things going to add to your reader's understanding? 3, 2, 1, go.